This episode is brought to you by Trailer Park Yard Games, where over 28 games are delivered directly to your party. We park the trailer, you party.
Here we are, we're going about our normal day-to-day life, and we get a sense that I'm worried about Joey. Fictitious Joey, and there's no Joey here. But I'm worried about Joey and what Joey's doing. What can I do? What should I do? How do I handle that? Joey hasn't said anything to me, but Joey's acting weird. Joey's not being himself anymore. He's doing things that I'm concerned about. What should I do?
Are we talking about Biden?
No. Oh, we went there. Well, maybe.
You said Joey.
Yeah.
You gotta get past the surface.
Let's have a chat, talk this and that with BB and Jaisy.
Well, welcome to the PB and Jaisy podcast. I'm Bill Stedham, and two seats over from me.
Hey, I'm Jaisy George. Nice to be here.
And I'm Sarah Paget.
Well, we're welcome to all of you. I'm glad you guys are here. It's going to be a great day.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
You know, the
it's
heat
waves.
It's
going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
A good one.
The heat waves finally broke, but today is going to be kind of tough. You know, many years ago in another career, one of my jobs was a criminal investigator. And whenever someone passed away and the circumstances were out of the ordinary, wasn't natural, we'd get called and an investigation would ensue. Our guest today is here to talk about suicide prevention and awareness and help all of us know how to prevent someone or help someone who may be considering tragically taking their own life. Brad, tell us more about yourself and why you're here.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for
Good
being
to see you all.
here.
Welcome.
A little bit why I'm here. My background is a little diverse. I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I have spent some time in the law enforcement world, but besides that, I've just had a lot of deaths close to me that were a result of a suicide, someone taking their own life. And so even from a younger age, early 20s, that is something that I began to experience periodically throughout life. And so it has kind of been a journey for myself to try to understand why these things happen in the world that we live in today and why it seemingly is getting worse. And so just to talk a little bit about that, statistics show that each year, this is a study done in 2020, each year the death toll is about 48,000 in the U.S. that are dying by suicide.
Wow.
So in 2020, that was the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And in just some of my notes here, forgive me for looking down, but for ages 10 to 14 and 25 to 34, it's the second leading cause of death for those age ranges.
Wow.
Really?
The only thing above that is an accidental death. So a freak accident, car wreck.
10 to 14, what like a...
I mean, think about that. That's middle school to early high school age kids that's the second leading cause of death for them.
I had no idea that age group, that it would be that high.
Right.
No, and we hear a ton about, and I know we need to hear more because it's still happening, but we hear, and we have an extra guest in the room today. There's a fly, so if y'all see us swatting. We hear a lot about military. We hear a lot about law enforcement. It's very prevalent in those careers. But we don't hear a lot about kids. I mean, they're just kids.
Right, most of that is because of the stigma that comes along with it. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's dark.
Yeah.
It's not a fun, pleasant thing to discuss, but that is the reality, and I think a light needs to be shed on that.
For sure.
Kids, I feel, grow up. We were talking about this earlier. They just grow up so much faster.
Right.
And it's scary. You know, you're a dad. I've got two kids, and it's like, it's scary to think of the things that the pressures that they might feel, the things that they're exposed to, the things that they see that can put them in a place at some point where they feel like there's nothing that they can do to make it better. So I know that you have like an organization that you are affiliated with or that you've helped. Is it the National Suicide Prevention?
Yeah, so I did want to talk a little bit about that too, because The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has been making some changes. One of the biggest changes is, they used to have this long 1-800 number. They just recently rolled out nationwide their new number, which is just 988. So just like 911, 988 is a suicide lifeline hotline that I think everyone needs to know that. And as simple as that is, still have that programmed into your phone, because even if it's not you, if you come across somebody, somebody that's close to you that is having some issues, you can make that call for them. If you're sitting down, you don't know what to say,
Right.
Which is a hard thing to know what's the right thing to say in that moment.
Right.
If you don't have some kind of training or background knowledge about it, you can call for them, and the three of you can sit there with that person on the other end of the phone and try to talk that out.
Well, I'm curious. So, I think I know some of the signs and some of the things to look for, but what should a person look for? Not everybody knows what the signs would be. And I've talked to a lot of people after a suicide has happened, and they had no idea that the person was down
I've been there.
or anything. So what are some signs? Not that we're going to catch it. You're not going to catch it all the time, but there are some signs.
It's definitely not black and white. I myself have experienced that kind of a death in a way that, I was with the person same day, out at lunch, having a great time, laughing, cutting up. Would have never thought in 100 years that's what would have happened a couple hours later.
Well, I hear that a lot. Like they go about their normal day, right?
And it's not just about suicide and taking your own life. It's a mental health crisis, and people get used to hiding that because, again, there's a stigma that goes along with it. No one wants to talk about what's going on up here. No, they're afraid. They're afraid of what people might think, what might happen to them. Does it put their job in jeopardy? Does it put their family at risk? Is something weird going to happen with their family or their kids because they're, having some issues? And so no one wants to talk about it. But the signs are just not black and white. People are very good at masking those symptoms, and part of that is a coping mechanism too. They can pretend to be happy, and maybe that'll help fade some of those feelings and thoughts that they're having. So it really boils down to you've got to get past the surface with people when you're having conversations. You've got to have those deeper relationships and deeper conversations with people to really know what's going on, because on the surface you're never going to see it.
Well, and we've talked about this several times, but social media is, and I'm not going to blame everything on social media, but it has caused some problems.
A component.
And we're still trying to learn how to deal with it. We haven't had it that long and the effects of it. But we're basically seeing everyone's highlight reel. So one of the worst things you can do when you're not in a good mental state is to get online and see how great everyone's doing. Because then you feel like everyone has their stuff figured out but me, or everyone's doing this but me. And, I think that's probably what's happening with that younger generation too.
When you think about them, for us, we've not always had it.
Right.
Like my kids will never know a life without social media and technology. And even though they're not really on it, but it's all around them and they know what it is.
Right. And they can't get away from it.
No, they'll never be able to get away from it.
Yeah. And I think some of that's just, it's going to have to change what we're teaching, teaching our children and teaching the youth, and we don't do a whole lot of like, say no to drugs and no drinking and driving. We don't talk about that as much as we did before. Now it's, don't text and drive, and mental health, and those conversations are changing, which are good, but I think we have to try to stay ahead of that, because
for sure,
even adults don't know how to handle it. So how is a child gonna know without being taught?
There needs to be. I'm sorry. There needs to be some educational setting for kids to learn how to cope with all the things that they have in their life, because it's different than we were kids. We don't really know all the answers for them because they live in a different world than we grew up in.
Exactly.
Completely different. And we're still trying to figure it out for ourselves.
And then we come in saying, back in my day.
I was going to say that. But seriously, I grew up in the 60s. And in the 60s, you couldn't say shit on TV.
Right.
In fact, if I had just said that on the radio in the 60s, you'd get a fine. Today, you can turn on TV and see an actual homicide play out.
Sure.
The kids don't know the difference. And, I think it desensitizes us. And then social media, you look at it and you see how great someone else's life is, and you see how, wow, I don't compare to that. I don't have this, or this. When actually what you're looking at is a highlight reel that's not even true. It's 45,000 shots to get that one shot.
Right.
There's just such an extreme vulnerability in talking about something like this. Like even when you have fostered those close relationships, it's very difficult. Like people generally ask, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? And we're just programmed to be like, oh, it's going great. How's yours? But are you doing great? Probably not. But you don't want to like unleash all of this stuff, even if it's someone that you're close with.
Right.
And so I think that I have seen that stigma be softened a little bit as the years have gone by, where there's a lot more awareness, even on social media, where I think
it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, there's been plenty of celebrity deaths by suicide that have just been really. I remember when Robin Williams committed suicide, just being like, what? Like, he's the happiest person that I think I could know. And
probably the funniest guy anyone ever knew at that time.
And everyone that would talk about it that knew him on set were like, he was extremely giving. He would, every time he was on set, he would feed all of the homeless population that was around it, because he knew what that was like. And he just was so giving, and had, people think that things like money and stuff like that are going to make life so much better for you.
Right.
But it doesn't matter how much you have. You can be in this state of extreme depression where you feel so
and I think
unlovable.
depression is such an evil thing, because most people that are depressed don't really have a reason. And that's not saying like I'm not validating them, but a lot of them will get in this loop of, I'm sad and upset, but I have no reason to be. I have a family and I have, everything I need, and things could be so much worse. So why am I feeling this way? And then they feel even worse because they're feeling that way. And it's a cycle. And I think people have gotten better about having conversations with people or going to talk to a professional. I really think everyone in the world should have an uninterested third party
I agree.
to talk to.
I agree.
And most people don't. And like Jaisy said, they're scared to talk to anybody.
Right.
Because,
especially if it's someone you know.
Yep, now they're going to judge me.
Right.
They're going to go tell somebody else, or they're going to know that what I posted on social media is really not true. So yeah, I think we need to get better about talking to people in general.
Well, and we tend to make fun of people. Just in general conversation, we tend to, I'm not going to say we belittle people, but we do joke with people, right? And I think sometimes that creates issues in and of itself.
Right.
Because, they don't want to be the brunt of a joke. And TV for some period of time didn't, it made fun of people who were seeking therapy back many years ago. They don't anymore. Obviously, they've gotten a little bit wiser and a little bit smarter.
Right. Be a man. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, and I think it's,
deal with it.
You have that aspect of it too, where guys are supposed to be tough and not talk about things, not show weakness. Right. And that's led to a culture of people bearing things that need to get out before things get bad.
Well, some of it's pride. I think we all struggle with being prideful and not saying,
I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Yeah, none of us can say I'm weaker than this moment. I need something greater than myself right now. I need something outside of myself. All of us are like, I can do it. I can handle it. I got it. And we don't. We're not created that way. I believe that we're created to need something bigger than us, which I believe is Jesus. But I think a lot of people try to do it on their own as a sense of pride. We start out as kids. Oh, no, I can do it. Let me do it, Mama. Let me do it, Daddy. And we get this ingrained that we always have to try to do it ourselves, or it's a sign of weakness if we can't,
Well, so I want to ask a couple questions, go two different ways. What if we have someone listening today that does have some of these thoughts and they don't know what they should do? What would you tell them to do? What steps should they take? They're afraid. They don't know where to turn. They haven't talked to anybody. They won't talk to their wife or their best friend or anybody else.
Right.
But in their head, they're like, man, I don't know if it's worth it. What do they do?
I would say if you're in that kind of a crisis right now, then you should absolutely call 988 and talk to somebody there. If you are contemplating that decision, that is absolutely what you should do. If you're just in a bad mental state and you just want someone to talk to, you're not to that point, but you're just down and sad and you just need a sounding board, then seek help. There's plenty of resources out there. Talk therapy is a great thing for people to have that soundboard that's unbiased, that can listen
even have online
and help.
Counseling too.
They do,
right? Yeah.
and that's become even more prevalent since the COVID-19 pandemic. With telehealth, having to adapt, and telehealth counseling services have really become mainstream. And you can get someone to chat with or video call with pretty almost instantly right now.
Okay, so let's take it from a different angle.
Sure.
Here we are, we're going about our normal day-to-day life, and we get a sense that I'm worried about Joey. Fictitious Joey, and there's no Joey here. But I'm worried about Joey and what Joey's doing. What can I do? What should I do? How do I handle that? Joey hasn't said anything to me, but Joey's acting weird. Joey's not being himself anymore. He's doing things that I'm concerned about. What should I do?
We talking about Biden?
No. Oh, we went there. Well, maybe.
You said Joey.
Yeah.
You gotta get past the surface. You gotta take the time, make the time in our super busy lives when that is inconvenient thing to do. You've got to make time to dig in a little deeper with that person and try to figure out what's going on and let them know that they are not alone.
What are things that people can look for that, it's not just going to be someone walking around wearing all black?
Yeah, it's probably not.
Yeah.
It just, and it can be different for every person. You just got to look for those things that are out of character for that person. If you know them well, you'll get that sense when something is just not quite right.
Right.
Even if they're, hey, what's going on? Oh, no, I'm fine.
I've seen also,
right,
right, or I've seen also they'll try to mask it with other things like substance abuse, alcohol, like whatever it might be to just try to numb whatever
Absolutely.
feelings
So,
that they're feeling.
Speaking of that, that is one of the risk factors. So just to go over that briefly, men are at a higher risk than women. Okay, that not necessarily being a man puts you at risk, but it does make it you more susceptible to that. If you know that a person has had prior attempts, they're much more likely to go there again. Depression, anxiety, and it takes, national statistic is there's 25 attempts for every one successful suicide. So that prior attempt thing is a pretty big deal. If they've attempted it before, they're at a much higher risk for doing it again without getting the proper help that they need.
Well, and I've heard things like financial trouble, divorce, being bullied, whether that's as a kid or as an adult, feeling like someone's turned on you.
Well, it's feeling like a burden, feeling like they're alone and feeling like they're a burden. So those two things can put someone in that mindset that,
the world would be better without me. Yeah.
My people are just better off if I go.
Right.
And I'm not here anymore. That's what can create the thought process. Where it gets dangerous is when that person no longer has a fear of death.
Yeah.
So when you have an intersection of those three things, I'm alone, I'm a burden, and now I'm no longer afraid of death. Right. When those three things intersect, that's when we've got a pretty serious problem.
Well, because like Jaisy was talking about, we're built for survival. Like our human instinct is to fight, to survive. So when we lose that, which sounds like what happens when you lose that, you don't have that push anymore. You know, and I think I've heard people getting diagnoses, thinking I don't want to spend the next 10 years of my life dying from fill in the blank. I don't want to burden my family to have to take care of me, or I don't have family to take care of me. And I think they're afraid. They can't see past the moment of what tomorrow might look like. Right. They're trying to fill in.
And it's not necessarily that they want to die. It's that whatever the pain that they're experiencing inside of them, they want it to stop.
Right.
And they can't figure out another way.
I watched a documentary this was years ago, but it was about one of the most famous places where people will attempt is I think it's the bridge in California. I forget which one it is. The Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a documentary about, there have been a couple of people that have been saved from that. Either when they've jumped, they've been somehow caught or whatever. And when they interviewed them and said, like, what was your first thought when you jumped? Their immediate thoughts were, I wish I didn't do it.
Yep.
You know, so you feel in that moment, but then it's like, wait a second, like I can't, you know, it's just incredibly scary to think, because your mind is such a powerful thing. Like,
It is.
Your mind can make you believe that you're sick, and all of a sudden you start having symptoms of sickness.
Absolutely.
Your mind can really control your, you know, there's that powerful mindset of, if you wake up in the morning thinking this is going to be a good day, it's going to be a good day. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, the whole day has just gone to crap, like I might as well just, that's really how your day is going to go.
Yeah.
And so knowing that your mind is such a powerful tool that can kind of turn your day either way, or your life either way, honestly, is really powerful to know, so that we take care of our mind.
And we can tap into that.
Right.
Well, and I have a question for you, because there's a lot, and I won't put this on the older generation. I think it's just where people go. But a lot of people say committing suicide is so selfish.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that statement?
I'm conflicted by that statement. I understand why people say that, but it's also, you're also kind of in a sense doing the whole victim blaming thing,
Right.
because we don't know what's inside the mind of that person in that place, and it's just not black and white like that.
Right.
It's much deeper and much more complicated than we recognize at the surface. And the mind is, like Jaisy said, it's a powerful thing, and we don't yet have all of the understanding that we probably will someday about the mind and how those things work as far as depression, anxiety, and how those things really take hold, even like you said, when there's seemingly not a reason for it to be there,
Right.
but it is.
Right.
A lot of times it's not even just because of, people can be depressed and not even, it's just it can be a chemical imbalance where your body's just not
Something doesn't have to
the right
happen.
way. Yeah, for you to
put
feel,
you in this
to have
state.
these feelings. Yeah.
So let me ask the question now. So we've talked about maybe some things that if we're in that position we can do.
Right.
Call 988. We've talked about if we see signs, what we can do, and certainly getting involved and having true conversations.
Yeah.
I think that's a good warning to us on our regular life all the way around. A good exercise for all of us is when someone says, "How you doing?" just say "crappy" and see what they do.
Yeah.
And some folks will say, "Hey, that's great. Keep right on walking." And you're like,
Right.
Person at the checkout thing,
Yeah.
hey man, did you find
Keep your
anything?
head up.
Absolutely not. Didn't find anything I wanted in this store.
and they just keep going. But now, so about 50,000 people a year commit suicide, if I heard you correctly,
Yeah.
48,000. And if we, I don't know the statistic, but let's say each of those people know at least 3 people that are close family. So that means there's about 150,000 people that are dealing with the effects at a minimum, probably much more than that.
Yeah.
How do we help those folks? What can we do to someone who's had a close relative, a close friend, an associate, someone they know that's committed suicide? We see it on Facebook all the time, and there'll be, we see these things, hey, if I had only known. What can we do to help those folks?
Okay, so for someone that has experienced that loss, those people need to seek help too. There are a lot of programs out there that you can go and take, some classes. There's a program that a lot of churches do called Grief Share. That's pretty good from my understanding. But also, it never hurts to go talk to somebody, talk to a professional. Let them know what you're feeling. Talk through that with them so that they can help you to understand and deal with the emotions that now you're left with because you've gone through this traumatic event in your life.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of blame and stuff too that people feel like I should have seen all the signs, I should have known, or how
Absolutely.
did I not know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's stuff that you can't just put on the shelf. You got to deal with it.
You do.
And I guess I would encourage everyone listening to this, if you know someone that's going through that has had a close friend or somebody commit suicide, I think it's more than us posting on Facebook, hey, we're there for them, we're going to pray for you.
Yeah.
Get in your car and drive over and visit with them. Get on the phone and talk to them. Go sit down and talk to them. I think we've lost that in our society. It's so easy to say,
Praying for you.
Thoughts and prayers.
And that's the extent of, we were having a book study. In fact, we were studying a book the other day, and Sarah was leading it, and an example came up. We had a situation that some of us are familiar with that's going through, and I'd sent out a group text to 3 or 4 people that were very familiar with the situation and said, hey, this person is having this happening today. Just want you all to keep them in mind and, reach out for them or whatever. And, also remember, say a little prayer for them. And one of the people in the group text, and it really touched me, did more than just saying, hey, praying. The person actually said a prayer, wrote it out, put it in a text, and sent it. And that meant a lot, because that was more than just someone saying, yeah, I'll pray for you. It was someone that was actually doing it. And then what I've seen after that is people actually going by and visiting this person, going by and spending some time with them. Those are the things that I think are important. Well, Brad, this has been a heavy subject.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It is heavy.
And it's a little bit different for our podcast, but I think it's
important.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's really, really important.
And of course, we will put links in the description for not just the phone number, but a website and hopefully some other things that if you or anyone that you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, these can hopefully be some useful resources for you.
So we've got a segment, we're gonna lighten it up a little bit. We've got a segment called Tales from the Lockbox.
So going along with the whole, you don't really know what's going on in someone's life. So a guy's at a gas station, and he notices that there's a couple in the car next to him. And it's a man and a woman, and the woman gets out of the car and starts pumping the gas. And it's like 9 o'clock at night, so he looks over, and the guy's the windows are down, and he says, hey, you're gonna make her get out and pump the gas? Just saying it as a joke, and the guy just points to the back seat with his wheelchair. And the guy's like, oh, okay.
Sorry.
And that is a real life reason of why you mind your business.
Mind your business, yeah. All right, and then we're going to level it up. So I found a quote from the one and only Helen Keller. I thought this was an awesome quote. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. So just encouraging you to see past the moment that you're in, knowing that you are being strengthened. We don't wake up one day strong. We only get stronger by the things that we go through. So hang in there and don't give up.
I think that's so important. Sarah, that brings up a question. It's probably going to be the true nature of our podcast, but I'm going to ask a question. I've always wanted to know this all my life since I've seen it. I drive up to an ATM, and there's Braille on the ATM for the driver to use. Why?
Well, what if they're in the back seat? What if the person's in the back seat and wants to do their own transaction?
I never thought of that.
What if they're in a Tesla?
And that's a very random
To
question.
that point, though, who is driving their relative or friend to the ATM that can't see and not just helping them?
Just doing it themselves. Maybe they don't trust them.
That's true.
I don't know if I would trust everybody that drove me.
I'm just confused by some of the things that we have in the world. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, but I really hope that you've learned some things today that can actually help us in life.
Yeah.
And, this is a serious subject, and it continues to get heavier and heavier as we go, and more people experience this. And, with social media and some of the things that we see today, it's not going to get any better. We need to do better as a society. Brad, thank you very much for being here today. Thanks for bringing some clarity and some light to a very tough subject.
Yes,
Let's
for sure.
all of us remember 988. I think it's really, really important for us to know about that. I read that in the paper the other day, and thanks for bringing that forward. This has been the PB and Jaisy podcast. Please like us. Please comment on our podcast. Let us know what you think. You can find us where popular podcasts are everywhere. This is PB and Jaisy. We out.
Just had a chat, talk this and that with PB and J.